That Was Yesterday podcast is brought to you by Define Mind and Body Wellness, my wellness center here in Glastonbury, Connecticut, where we specialize in holistic services to help shortcut the process so that you can see results fast, but learn to do it in a habitual way. So many of the topics we talk about are part of the program that our clients receive, except they get much more in-depth detail. Also, my workbook of the 10-week program to lose and never look back, which is only available to our patients at Define. If you are interested in holistic body fat spot reduction, or our pod to increase your metabolism, or our cold plunge, or our sauna, which is the best sauna in the world, and that I promise you, I know that sounds biased, but you'll see for yourself. Please go to definewellnesscenter.com. You will be prompted to put your information in and make sure to mention podcast when you do, as you will be eligible for a bigger discount on our introductory services because you are a listener. Appreciate you. Have a great day and enjoy today's podcast.
Let's get this going. So I am recording this obviously from an audio perspective for the podcast. Maybe not so obviously if you watch this on video right now, but also for video to share on other platforms. And I'm on my deck outside, and I have to say, it feels amazing. I can't tell you how many days, however many days there's been of this summer, by the way, that I've just looked at this desk and platform out here and just haven't gone out there. I've done some breath work, but in terms of doing actual work, I just haven't yet. Some days been too hot, you get how that goes. But I've been due for a podcast. There's been a lot that I've wanted to express. Just, oftentimes too, a lot of what I'm talking about here is what I'm working with specific clients on now. So it's like in a real time sort of way to problem solve and then share. I know a lot of people are going through a lot of tough times right now, and some things are unspeakable, unspeakable. So it's like, it's a lot. That said, there has to be some even tiny shift. Something's going to be healthy for that individual, or for you, if you're listening to this. Anything, 5%. What does that look like? It could be 60 seconds a day, something. I mean, I know that sounds so cliche and obvious, but I'm going to share today sort of a pattern, a cycle, if you will. I see with, people who have experienced wide range of traumas. We're talking horrible traumas, such as losing kids, such as sexual abuse as children, child abuse, domestic abuse, horrible moments of just where they felt like nothing, low self-esteem issues, really bad stuff. But also with people who have had events that they may not think is a big deal, but it is in some way, and it could affect you in a way you're just maybe not aware of. But if we can release that, man, it can really change your being. And so that's kind of what I'm here to share today. I just want to make sure it's clear, when something does happen where you're going through and it just seems unreasonable, you have every right to feel whatever you feel and allow yourself that grace. Just at some point when you get that initial sort of period of whatever that is, let it be what you feel is right. When you start to feel your health and your stress become too much, then just a little bit of redirected energy can go a long way. And so today we're going to talk about how that's important. And I also wanted to let you know we have one more event in July for group hypnosis. The confidence, you hear the birds? Birds are pumped up for the event. The event is on confidence, about building confidence from within, and that's really what the sort of programming hypnosis is going to be about. And last night we had an anxiety hypnosis, and man, the energy was amazing. I've had the privilege to coach big and small group fitness classes. There's an energy in that room that's it's unlike anything, especially seeing somebody improve. It's literally the coolest thing. I feel sometimes selfish as a coach because you get to feel this. I wish everybody could feel this. That was a different type of energy output for me, and I did that so many times, and I still love doing it every here and there. But like anybody and everyone, new challenges arise, your passion shifts. And for me, that really has been the mental work that I've been doing, not only with myself, that's been the driving force for, literally since I was in high school, and obviously built, and it's still going. Let's be real, it's still going 100%. It's always in progress, but I see so many other people suffering in ways that they don't have to suffer. There's gonna be pain without question, but you don't have to suffer. And suffering is sort of unnecessary pain. It's layering. We sort of avoid the issues more and more and avoid ourselves and what the self needs. The self needs physical and mental, emotional health, or otherwise the system shuts down. And if you are someone who is local and you feel somewhat somewhat disconnected internally, I would invite you to come to one of our group hypnosises. Last night we had 15 people. It was a big group. The energy was amazing. That's the shift from fitness. It's like this other energy where like you can feel the stress and sort of uncertainty slowly dissipate throughout the session. And it's almost immediate, to be honest. And that blew me away. As I've been doing hypnosis for years, but group hypnosis has been something I've been doing in recent months. And I've been programming this for years, but I didn't feel it was ready up until now. And just noticing though the shift in energy, it's crazy. It's really a gift to be able to witness that. And so if you are someone who feels like you are tight, you are stuck, even if you feel confident, this would be a really good opportunity to experience like a deep parasympathetic state of relaxation. And it's so much easier to do when you're in a group with inviting energy, with everybody with the same intention. There's like a collective consciousness that starts to arise. I mean, there is 100% omni collective consciousness, but in small micro environments like that, where everybody's there for a very specific purpose, there creates a special level. It was also referred to as like a mastermind principle by Napoleon Hill. I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen masterminds all pop up all over the place, but the actual concept is when you get people together for a specific focus and everybody's open and working towards that focus, the greater power of everybody accumulates to a point you just could not achieve as an individual in that duration. And so it becomes powerful. That's the cool thing about this group hypnosis, is that that is the vibe. It's cool to see, it's cool to experience. So if you are somebody who would love to join for a session or two, we'd love to have you. You can get more information at neverlookbackweightloss.com. That site, we have to be better at updating, but if you do put your information in there, we'll make sure that you get notification. The next one, next Thursday, is July 31st. So July 31st, August 12th, and more information, neverlookbackweightloss.com. All right, so it's been on my heart lately, knowing people close to my circle going through unfair, crazy things, as well as just seeing global events. And then what I do every day, helping people. A lot of people who come to Define, maybe for hypnosis or not, they still have tremendous stories of, hard times, hardship, and so I get the privilege to work with a lot of people, but I do know there's a lot of people who are out there sort of quietly suffering. And so this has been something kind of on my heart to express, and I really feel it's important to have more of a communication and sort of direction about, because from what I understand from the people I've worked with, maybe I can't feel the depth of their pain. What I do know is that there is tremendous pain that unfortunately at some point it will hit a tipping point where the body's only and the mind are only so resilient. And today we're going to sort of talk through that cycle of what it is. So I'm just going, by the way, from my notebook where I journal. It's also my notebook where I take insights from my own development or from patients and people I get to work with. And then sometimes I just write on different topics. So, but this particular one is relatively organized, but it's okay. We're going to make it conversational and sort of talk through the major points. But the big thing with pain, to make us understand, is that it's obviously a shock to the system. And there's an evolutionary response that takes place. Like the animal part of our brain that's connected to our fight or flight hasn't evolved in how many thousands of years. And where there was once real imminent threat like around us daily. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of threats in our lives and globally, but like we're talking like not knowing if another tribe was going to attack you. Like we, fortunately, most of us I should say, because unfortunately that happens in countries all around us, but Americans are very fortunate anyway. God bless for that. But the point is that there's less of that going on now than there ever was, but our system is relatively the same. Now our system can't delineate between like immediate urgent threat or something that's just really stressful or something that's like nothing, something that someone said online that we don't even know, right? And that's another problem, is that our brain is getting overloaded with constant stimulation. You think about it, again, our brain hasn't evolved much. You think about the capacity of evolution at the time, our brain was like a village. And now our brain has to deal with almost like, New York Times Square in the heart of everything, like so much going on at any given time, right? You take all of that and you add this unnecessary pain that you're dealing with, that's either something that was reignited somehow through some sort of setting event, that's something back to your childhood or something in your past where it never really was healed and this sort of brought it about, or it ignites this whole new trauma of varying degrees. What's interesting is that a lot of us don't recognize micro traumas in the way we really need to. Macro traumas are those big unspeakable events that you just can't explain. It's just horrible to even experience or even think about someone having to experience. But micro traumas can also affect you. They could be as simple as a coach, saying you're not an athlete when you're in middle school, or a sibling calling you fat or stupid or retarded over and over and over. That is what you think about yourself if that's what you hear during a developmental age. That's not a conscious choice by the young child. It's a protective mechanism because the child may not be able to defend itself. So what does it do with that pain? It can't really deflect and sort of fight for it because it's a vulnerable child. So also it finds a way to absorb it, a way for you to keep going through that so that, you're accepted and you're away from that sort of pain, but it's never really resolved. And so if you're someone who has had something like that in your past, or again, just something horrible when you were a kid that hasn't been healed, this stuff manifests. Talked about this before, but if you were like moderately stressed during COVID and then you had some unresolved stuff inside of you from your past you've never dealt with, then COVID hits, like that brought people over the cliff in many cases, and rightfully so, because it was just another thing that you couldn't control, that was crashing down on you, overwhelming, uncertain, all of the things that generally make you feel uncomfortable, right? It's all there. These are people who have had a journey in COVID. Some got more healthy, some got less. Out of COVID, the opposite happened, and then trying different things over the years. We're talking people who have spent hours and hours and hours, year after year in therapy, who have tried all sorts of SSRIs. Doctors, it's like you're almost in a lot of cases a lab rat, where it's like, well, hey, let's try this. Oh, that didn't work. It's not working. By the way, what is not working? Because isn't it supposed to be a bridge? We're just diagnosing someone with something they can't ever control or beat. Like, when we want to empower that, when it is in fact the truth. So like when someone says it's not working, we just up the dosage. Would you ever do that in like any other situation? Like, that makes sense, right? It's like, once you want to get to the root of the problem, I don't see that happening. And that's what I'm so passionate about, because, I've had so many cases, patients will get double the doses and they're like, I went to therapy, the therapist offended me, or the therapist wasn't listening, or I was distracting the therapist, I wasn't ready for therapy, but it was kept going. And I'm sorry, I just can't get on the same page with that. You can't just give somebody more if for whatever reason therapy isn't working. And again, it doesn't mean a therapist was bad in some cases. It's just that if it's not working, the person's not healing. And if you're not healing, there should be an understanding between like, it's not working because it's not the right approach, or you're not healing. And oftentimes it's not working. It could be just the way of therapy. Again, I'm not knocking therapy. It's helped a lot of people. I'm not saying that. I can just go off of what I hear often. The difference with hypnosis is that in therapy, you're conscious. You're still conscious in hypnosis, but you're heightened. You're talking about things that are making you sad or angry. And in that way, you're not able to get clarity. Your subconscious is effectively blocked. And that's really hold our truth. Again, this isn't the case for everybody, but these are patterns that I see. And so the difference in hypnosis is that while you are conscious, you are in control, you can control what you say and do, you are at such a deeply relaxed state that your subconscious is receptive and open. And so it can answer things and help you heal about your past. It can help rewire new programming. And so that's, a difference there. But again, it's like, we can't just use that as like, okay, let's just give more medication. And I see more and more people are just labeled at an early age that they're depressed. There was one I heard the other day that a girl was told it was something syndrome, that I was like, well, what exactly is that? I've never heard that before. She's like, oh, well, it's the thing you get before they diagnose you as depressed. So I was like, why are we diagnosing somebody with that? I get you're saying it's not depression, but you're saying it's a form of it and you're about to have it. Why don't we just not do that and just give this person direction rather than let things slide? Like, that drives me nuts. And so I don't know. I go all back to this. I don't pretend to be some expert on everything, but I can speak from what I've experienced, and everything that I share here is 100% related to experience. And so here we are. So these events happen and your system gets heightened. And when your system gets heightened, the number one thing you're focusing on is threat. It's a fight or flight survival-based mechanism. So no matter what you have in your life that might not be an imminent threat to you in this moment, you're experiencing what you would to the degree you feel what you feel if you were in that moment where like your life was literally on the line. Like, those same type of emotions start to happen. Now, as these issues worsen, or as you continually block or repress or consciously suppress the pain, sometimes it's not like you're doing it on purpose. It's just your ego. The psyche is so fragile. It can't deal with some trauma sometimes. And so it creates almost like a blackout for a lot of people. And we can recover that. We've done it before, but it's a real thing. Our systems have not evolved, and there has not been enough solutions presented to us that are things that are holistic. And that drives me crazy, because the deeper I go down this rabbit hole and working with people and just constant exploration with self and materials from the past, studying guys like Carl Jung and trying to do my best to emulate the philosophy in a way that I see works in today's world, I've seen and witnessed a lot of change. And I only say that to say, if you're someone who has felt stuck, just know there's a path. I promise you that. And so today, though, we're going to kind of tell the story of the cycle. It's one where you're in that heightened state of survival. Your system is focused on nothing more than what threats are around you. What are your fears? What are your concerns? All your sensibilities are heightened. You become hypersensitive to your feelings. You get more emotional. Things make you feel that you maybe hadn't before. It's because you're in a high state of awareness, because your body's only thinking about protection. The capacity of our animal brain is the same as it was back in in caveman days almost. And small villages, you think about it, the capacity sort of evolved for a village size output, ability. So as all of your systems slow down, as your fight or flight state heightens, it's preparing for literal survival. So all of your systems, your digestion, your elimination, your lymphatic system, your reproduction, your metabolism, all of these systems slow down, because think about what one would need in a physical time of threat. Back when our brain, our operating system was evolved, the type of threat was much more immediate and imminent. It was some sort of quite literal survival situation. We don't have that in most cases. We have things that make us feel that way. And when things make us feel that way, then your body responds the same exact way. And so you think about it, your body is sort of set up for conservation. So as you're in something that is threatening to you, you don't need to eat. Eating is just going to be a disadvantage. Your body's got to process it, right? So what does it do? Does it make you hungry? All right. Well, what does that mean if you're not hungry? Well, you're not eating enough. What happens if you don't eat enough? You don't get the right nutrients, which then leads to nutrient deficiency, whether we're talking, with your blood and iron or vitamin D, or in a lot of ways, protein and all sorts of things that I see affect people. And so then that has a byproduct. You start to lose muscle, because muscle is costly to keep. When you're losing muscle, because you don't have nutrients, your fat tends to increase. Muscles are metabolic. The more muscle you have, the more your body is naturally burning. But if you're taking in less, those muscles are going to go away. The other thing that can happen is your hair and your nails and your skin development could all stall or slow down. Then of course, when you are in that way, at some point you do get hungry. And when you do get hungry, you're going to seek something that's going to be an instant relief. Something high sugar. Sorry, realtors. Hi guys. I'm in the middle of a podcast. How you guys doing?
All right, tell them.
I'll tell them you said hello.
Tell them we said hello.
Do it. Plug. What's the name of the real estate company?
Murray Real Estate.
Murray Real Estate, Glastonbury. There we go. That's awesome. So you do end up eating at some point because you have to. And then when you do, you're going to crave something that's going to give you some sort of instant relief and especially comfort, right? Think about what that means. There's then added sugar. There's chemicals and things that you're likely ingesting if it's processed, right? And all of these things create toxins if they're not, your body's not processing it. And if there are a lot of chemicals in it, then that will create toxicity in your gut. And the issue is that, as we said, digestion slowing down, right? So you're less hungry. What does that mean? Well, your elimination is directly affected. And so if you're not going daily, that's a problem. And unfortunately, I've had so many people tell me their doctors told them, well, that's just how you go. That's just how you are. Excuse me? Going twice a week? No. I promise you there's always a reason. I've seen it being anxiety. I've seen it being lack of water. I've seen it being lack of alkalinity. And I'm not just talking about alkaline waters that we see everywhere now. I'm talking about real things that are going to give you alkalinity, like super green celery powder, aloe vera juice with no added sugar. These are things that are going to give you true alkalinity. Technically, try to stay away from the bottle in that case, because in some degree, there's more chemicals in those bottles that, even with this clean drink, it can affect. Obviously, it's better than nothing. But the point is, there's a lot of things that I've seen help people with their gut. And yet, what tends to happen? Well, we don't know what it is. You get 5 minutes with the doctor, the GI, or you might even get a nurse practitioner, which, no offense, but if you have an issue, you generally want to talk to the doctor. It's just kind of me as a patient. That's what I would want. But it's well, let's take this test. Let's take that test. Okay, well, we weren't able to find this. Let's do this food sensitivity test. Let's do this. Stay away from these foods. And they give you these limitations without a plan, or they give you something like omeprazole, where that thing, it's crazy. So the package used to read, literally on the package, do not take for more than 2 weeks. Guess what they did? They make them in 2-week serving sizes now. So they don't have that warning. That is crazy. And that's allowed, because what it ends up doing, yes, it's short-term relief. I've taken it when I had some gut issues, but part of what I'm talking about through what I've discovered with my gut knowledge is from my experience that then is translated to many people in different areas. And anxiety is an interesting one. I never knew would be a thing until then, of course, we work through it and you see it's there over and over and over. There's just a lot of things that can be done holistically, right? And that's just not done. And so I don't want to get too far off on a gut tangent here, but what we can all say is that gut health has got tremendously worse in the last 5 years. And as stress levels have increased, as suicide rates elevated in 2020, came down a little bit, but they're still elevated after 2020 than they were prior to 2020, which is horrible to see. 80% of which are men. But the point is that stress is a real problem, and it's getting worse, and it's affecting your gut. And so think about it: heightened cortisol, slower digestion, elimination. When you're impacted, you're not going regularly, toxins get exposed into your gut. This increases acidity, but it also increases toxicity. And toxins are fat soluble, especially if you're someone who is looking to lose in your gut. gut and you have a lot of extra weight there, toxins, or those fat cells are susceptible and toxins will go inside them. And then that makes that problem that much worse because it can prevent a whole lot, like all your natural processes start to become affected with the higher toxicity you have in your system. Not to say that's the one reason for everybody, because obviously there are so many unfortunate things that go into that. It's a whole different discussion. The one thing we cannot deny is that to the degree you are in an elevated state of stress, your reproductive system will be less responsive than it would be without that extra stress. And that can be really tough for, families who are going through those types of issues. And it's a tough situation because you got to balance yourself and your health, but it's this omnipresent thing, right? So again, it just goes back to what we're talking about at the very beginning, which is like shifting a little bit of your energy to something that I would call forward action, moving you better. Because as you can see, stress is taking over everything. One thing I didn't mention was the lymphatic system, which is basically in charge of fat loss and detox of the body. That system becomes overloaded. And whenever that happens, it's not going to be as responsive. You're not spreading as much blood and oxygen and nutrients throughout your body. So what does that mean? Well, it can mean a number of things. It could just mean tension and tightness and joint pain, which then can turn into easily some sort of serious issue that's a broken bone or a torn ligament, because it sort of slowly progressed from at one point was just sort of tightness because of lymphatic drainage issue. I see this stuff evolve. And then what does that mean? This person's getting a surgery that even they may in that moment probably don't even need. And I just say that because again, this is a pattern I see a lot. I'm not saying it's every situation, but most often people are getting surgeries they don't need in a lot of ways. And I see it every day. And that puts a lot of stress on your body, particularly if you're somebody over 50 who hasn't been the most healthy. But even if you are healthy, 50, 60, 70, doesn't matter. Any sort of surgery, there's a high degree of risk and there's an after effect. There's scar tissue. There's the amount of stress that it put on your system. Stuff that you might have need to injected before or after to make the surgery palatable. There's so much that goes into it. So if you don't need it, try to avoid it, right? And I can, again, just speak from experience. I'm not saying all cases, but most cases you don't need surgery. There's a lot we can work through. But the point is, this is another byproduct of stress. And so I share all of this. I feel like, again, there are some horrible situations that people have dealt with that you might be going through. By the way, it's all relative. There's no chart. There's obvious things I think we all can agree on, but there are things that are really affecting people. There's a lot that happens with stress. And sometimes I often see with people, they'll sort of disregard or not acknowledge the depth of what they're going through. And maybe because they say, well, it's not this horrible thing that so-and-so has, right? We try to compare, which you think about when you do that, right? Really what you're doing is telling that part of you. I've talked about this in many podcasts before, but I want to share it shortly for those who might be listening to this first time. We are all made up of parts or sub-personalities or energies. You can call it what you want. But the parts that tend to be more dominant are those that were sort of relied on during some state of survival early on throughout life. And oftentimes, if those parts are heightened in a certain way, it's going to seem like that's how you are. But really, these parts of you, call it anger, call it pusher energy, call it perfectionist energy, call it inner critic, call it the saboteur, which the saboteur is all-encompassing. It's more of a higher level element of which there's a cohort of self-sabotage parts that are very active. But my point is that we are made up of all these parts. And so if we don't sort of listen to these parts when they say there's a problem, right? In other words, the thing you say that is no big deal because, oh, this is stupid. It's not like so-and-so who has X, Y, Z. Well, what you're really saying to that part who's hurt in you, that's why you feel what you feel. If you weren't hurt, you wouldn't feel it, right? But when you deny it, it's like you're denying to this part. Imagine this part like you're a kid. That's quite literally in many cases what it is. These parts of you stop maturing once they go through whatever that setting event was. And so if you have this party for one reason or another that was activated as a child, it sort of locked that element of you, that emotion in you to that point in time. So it's the maturity level of a child, quite literally. I say that to say, imagine telling your child something that made them feel upset and you're like, oh, that's stupid. What's wrong with you? It's not like so-and-so who has that problem. Would you ever say that to your kid? I mean, of course not. You never want to hurt them, but we say it to ourselves. And so if you say it that part of you who's already wounded and already hurt, it's just going to create more separation and more protection in between. And protection can manifest in a lot of different ways. It's like what people don't understand is that, and I understand why they say it, they'll say, I don't exercise, I don't have the energy, I don't feel like it. But really what they're saying is I am just not allocating any sort of resource to it because it's something that actually gives you energy. Obviously you're using some sort of caloric expenditure, but it can be as basic as whatever that is to you. It could be getting up and walking around your house. It could be walking down the street. It could be a 10-minute workout. It could be many different things to many different people. The point is something is better than nothing. So I call progress, anything, right? There's that. What a workout will do, no matter how small, it will give you some positive emotion of some sort of dopamine sort of rush. In some way, you'll feel a little bit better if you do a little bit of exercise without question. It's going to happen. But other than that, it's getting your system going even a little bit. Now, let's think about not doing something. Okay, there's not that physical effort per se. So the person who chooses inaction is not exerting physical force per se that they would have with exercise. So that's true. However, their system is a little bit less responsive because you don't want to rely on food for your metabolism. Like, you want your body to be hungry because you burn calories, not because from a behavioral perspective, you're used to eating 3 times a day. Most people, we fall into habits like you need to eat at a certain time. Well, that's only because a part of you feels very comfortable with that because that's what you've done for years. That's safe, that's familiar. There's a lot of uncertainty in the world. We hang on to these routines. It doesn't mean, though, from a physiological perspective, it's what your body actually needs. What we don't realize is that little dopamine rush is actually a part of our survival as well. Like, that feeds us, that fuels us. That is why we respond like that. Our body needs some sort of physical movement, almost as if it's a reward for moving. You get blood flow, you get your heart pumping, starting to metabolize more, muscles grow, your bones, your joints get stronger, right? Your body responds. But when we don't give it that opportunity, it's not even like we don't get that. We get the complete opposite of that. The body starts to break down. The body ages. And especially the more weight you gain. Think about it. The person who is 300 pounds doesn't have a completely different skeleton, like not noticeable difference in the skeleton bones than a person, maybe their ideal weight of 180. Like, they have that same skeleton. So you just think about all that excess and what that does to the body, right? And in many ways resilient. But the point is like, whether it's mental fat, because there's mental fat, which is the stuff we carry with us that we don't need, right? Stuff we can process, or there's physical fat in a similar way we don't need to carry. There is a way to get it down. It does have a byproduct. There's a lot of things we need to think about, right? But the point is that neither scenario, both are possible, but they're only made possible when you in your head get to a level where it's safe. We've talked about these parts of you being dominant. Well, what's threat to them? Well, the progress is. Because to those parts that are struggling right now, to them it feels as if, like, if we do any sort of change here, it's a death of, what will I be? It's quite literally a death of an identity. And I know this might sound crazy for a lot of you people who are just hearing it now, but this is how powerful these parts are. I see it play out in life, working through parts. I do a lot of them. I'm a voice dialogue facilitator. I can see posture, body language, tonality, persona, all change with different parts are active with various patients. It is wild. And I also notice within myself, and I'm telling you, these parts are very powerful. And so when we don't want to be at odds with them. We don't want to fight them. So the best ways is to make subtle change, is to letting yourself know, okay, you're safe. Because all of these parts, ultimately, the one thing they have in common is that they're concerned about your safety. But if you're dealing with things in life that are making you feel like you're in a heightened state of stress and you're in that fight or flight, these parts are not feeling safe. And that's why all of the systems slow down, including your mental system and especially your emotional capacity. You start to realize you spill more emotions out because you can't contain them anymore. And there are some people who harden those emotions but manifest it in anger sort of expressions and all types of things, right? Generally not good for us. Not bad to have anger. Everybody gets angry, by the way. Everybody gets angry. But it's channeling that energy in a productive way. When we don't, we can channel in a very negative way, as we're all very familiar with. So these parts are important. And so we have to treat them all with respect. And so when you are looking to make a change, you don't want to go in guns a-blazing. Be like, all right, listen up. Every day I'm going 60-minute new routine, waking up early, 60-minute meditation, burying my head in a cold bowl for... No, like, stop. Like, okay, cool. Like, I'm not saying any of that stuff is bad, but like, can we just talk about like being real for a moment here? It's not about what you do. It's about what you do that you can do over time. So a big part of that, though, is the sort of mental health within you to sustain those sort of physical actions. We act as if there's just the action of doing. No, there's so much under the doing. There's the parts that direct exactly what you do and what you don't do. So if we make this threatening sort of life switch, it tends to not work out well, which is why most people who start off fast in January finish hard before February 1st. It's the same idea, just the concept plays out over and over and over. And so make it easy on your system. Continually let yourself know, like, take 60 seconds right now to lessen your anxiety, to gain a level of objectivity. Put your hand over your heart, and I get what it might sound or feel or look like, but I'm telling you right now, if you're open to this, I promise you, you will feel a significant shift by the end of this. And by the way, if you're driving, please keep your eyes open and do this later. So nice inhale, big exhale. Just let it go. Be here for a moment. Let the shoulders drop. The eyes get heavy. Let the heart rate slow down. And slowly inhale through the nose at a cadence of 4. Calm, confidence, clarity, self-control. Hold your breath. Recognize you're holding your breath. You are in control of your being. Now slowly exhale, let go, let go of any anxiety or fear. Let it go. Inhale slowly, calm, confidence, clearly, self-control. Hold. Own your self-control simply by holding your breath. You are in full control of your being through your breath. Now slowly exhale. Any sort of doubts, let them go. Limitations, let them go. Anxieties, let them go. Fears, let them go. That's all it takes. We're talking about energy change, and that little thing we just did right there is, in fact, energy change. And when moments where you start to lose belief in a lot of things, you can't lose belief in yourself, because what left is there. And that becomes really important, especially if there are people relying on you. And that's not to add more pressure, but it's just to recognize, like, improving your health isn't a selfish thing. If you're gonna call it that, I'm fine with that too. But by you improving your health, you're benefiting everybody who relies on you, who loves you, who cares about you. And when I say bettering your health, we're talking in all ways. It's physical, it's mental, it's emotional. And if you're doing all of that, you are indirectly lifting up people around you, even who are not people who you know well or you love per se. But of course, the people who are closest in your life have a direct benefit from that. So that's an important thing to recognize, because often when we don't want to do something for ourselves, it's important to link it to something that we would do anything for. And so in this case, you can sort of let the focus be as, hey, I'm doing this for them. And that will get you to start doing, as we said, start shifting a little bit of energy. Then once you shift a little bit of energy, it starts to perpetuate. Momentum breeds momentum. And before long, things accumulate. You start to feel better and better and better. And you start to see things more clearly and make you really appreciate what you have. And for some of us, this is a long journey. It depends on the depth of whatever it is that you're going through. And I just want you to know that I hear you and I see you. And that's okay. There's no rush. There's no rush. Just do your best. That's all.
Well, that is all we have for today's episode. I hope you found some value. And I hope you share this with friends. You know, maybe you're someone who is going through a really tough moment in your life right now, and hopefully you're not. However, there likely are people in your circle who are. And I swear to you, even if whoever listens to this never ever comes in contact with me or ever says thank you to you, if they at least are open to what we've talked about today, just from you sharing this could lead to a whole momentum switch in the right direction for an individual. Because as we talked about, when you're going through really tough times, it could feel isolating, and it could also feel like you're just trapped and there's nowhere to go. And so those are real feelings. However, as we talked about, there's always a path. Even just a little bit of an energy shift can go a long way. So please go ahead. You can text the link through Spotify or on your stories, share with a friend if you found value. And if you didn't at all, then totally understand why you wouldn't want to share with people if you thought it sucked. But if that's not true, please, I would appreciate it if you did share. And always love hearing from you on social media. So keep that going, and I'll see you next time.